This is the Uptick Newswire Stock Day podcast, sponsored by InvestorsHangout.com and Equities.com. Subscribe to us on iTunes and YouTube to stay up to date on penny stock news and interviews, public information on OTC, pink sheets, and microcap stocks from around the world. With your host, Everett Jolly.
On today's show, I'm bringing back an old guest, and I say that in a nice way. He hasn't been on my show for about 2 years, but I'm excited to have him on the show and find out what's going on with this company. It is Biostage, Inc. They trade on the OTCQB under the ticker symbol BSTG. Stock price is around $3.30. And with us today, we're very fortunate and lucky to have him as the CEO and director of the company, Jim McGorry. Jim, welcome to the show.
Everett, thanks. Nice to be back.
Give my listeners a little bit of about statement about you and your company, and then I want to get into the Q&A.
Yeah, thanks, Everett. You know, we're an early but very promising biotech regenerative medicine company in the Boston area. We're developing bioengineered organs. Sounds crazy. Bioengineered organ implants. We use the concept of the body's ability to heal itself. We bring a scaffold and we put on stem cells. And so that's how we focus, doing very, if you will, future stuff. But the promise of it is really here today, and we're transitioning to a clinical stage company in 2019.
You know, I wanted to talk about some of your bioengineer organ implants. What is that exactly? You're going to have to educate myself and my listeners, especially me. I don't get around that every day.
Right, and happy to do that. And I think that, as you know, and your listeners know, that there's organ shortages in a number of different areas that people are trying to be able to focus on. There's a lot of science into tissue engineering and stem cell biology and other areas. It's a combination way to be able to bring cells in and to create that 3D scaffold of that organ itself, and then trigger the body's natural healing response and stem cell niche to be able to regenerate tissue and have that organ function. And someday they'll do hearts, and someday they'll do livers, and someday kidneys. But today we're focused on what they call hollow organs, our body's tubes, the esophagus, our, if you will, food, pipe, and then our trachea, our windpipe. So that's what we're focusing on, where you have to then take out a piece or a segment, and instead of where there's not standards of care for folks, we're able to now implant something with targeting, regenerating that area, reconstituting the integrity of that, and then only thing that there is a biological response. So that is where we're focused on today, and a particular area in atresia in kids, which is a big problem.
Well, explain that to us. What are some of the biggest problems in kids today that you guys are focusing on?
Yeah, thanks, Everett. And so the area that we're focusing on for our first indication is referred to esophageal atresia. And what that is a congenital abnormality or a birth defect. And people say, I'm not really sure what atresia is, but 1 out of every 2,500, and in some countries 1 out of every 3,000 kids are born with a gap between their upper and lower esophagus. The body just does not kind of fuse back together into that area. And so what these kids face is really, really a challenging area, because they cannot eat orally, and then they have difficulty to survive and move forward. And so some of the current standards of care are they go into the stomach, they take out the stomach, they staple it into a tube and put that in. They go into the colon and they take out, sorry to talk about colon on in your show, and to implant that in. And these kids, yes, it's the best thing that they have for them today, but it almost sounds like medieval surgery, and that is what is being done. And we believe the use of our technology through the scientists and doctors and advisors that we have, we put in our esophageal implant with that patient's own cells, and then it triggers a host response, regenerates that, and then the scaffold that we use to deliver that, or our cell delivery device, is removed in a non-surgical procedure, so the only thing that's left is a biologic response. It's almost Star Wars, but it is true science, what is here today in tissue engineering, stem cell biology, and our knowledge of engineering. And so those are bioengineered organs focused on esophageal atresia.
But this esophagus problem is more of a third world country problem.
It is really not. It's one of the seventh largest cancer. It's a real focus. But it's an area, the more that I've learned about it, Everett, I talk to people and they say, you know what, I had an uncle or I had a father. Because people in the esophagus, you don't think about it, your esophagus, until you have a problem with it. When people have heartburn, what is that? A lot of heartburn is gastric juices coming up into the esophagus. But those gastric juices then change the inside or the epithelium of the esophagus. And that leads to another condition that maybe some of your viewers heard called Barrett's syndrome. And then Barrett's syndrome can lead to progress to esophageal cancer. So the esophagus or diseases of the esophagus are quite common. These different, kind of proton pump inhibitors or other things where people will take Pepsid or other things have greatly changed, the pH levels and other things into the esophagus. Prior to those, there were many more challenges. But people born with a gap or other areas is a real problem.
Jim, I want to switch gears here just for a second and talk about your third quarter financials. Where did those revenues come from? Can you expand on that just a little bit?
Yeah, thanks. A little bit of clarification there. We're still a preclinical company, right? So, not revenues. We have, our third quarter that we just announced today, we had a really good quarter, and it's a lot preparing to go to the clinic. That's where we are pivoting right now. Everett, we're going into, the clinic, meaning clinical trials, filing with the FDA into mid-year 2019. And so, we're like a lot of the Boston-based biotech firms. It's without revenue, but we sit with promising platform technology that can be used in the esophagus, can be used in the trachea, can be used in the bronchus, and we're very, very excited to bringing this technology to the market. First through clinical trials done correctly, and when you do a clinical trial in a child, you really have to be able to do tremendous work to be able to make sure all things are safe before that happens. So we're working with the FDA around those pieces right now. Sir.
Well, I think congratulations is in order. You awarded a $1.1 million fast track phase 2 grant. What is that going to do for you guys?
Absolutely great. When a company, and your listeners know, and particularly all of those that are investing into companies and hoping that, that technology hits. So, one, they see that for, helping patients, but also a financial return. When you bring in $1.1 million of non-dilutive financing, that's very favorable.
Absolutely.
But this was the NIH, and this was, if you will, the Eunice Kennedy Shriver program for kids. And so they are helping, fund our program to, quote, translate this, bringing it through the clinic and into it. And so when the NIH stands behind it, they have to see, which they do, that we're a very promising company. You have to go through a lot of rigors to get that type of grant, and it's the innovation part of it and the Eunice Kennedy Shriver children. So we're very, very proud of that million. We have raised and brought and spent over $50 million to date. And so, yes, that million will greatly add to it, but it's really the validation, both financially and scientifically, of our platform, and we're very, very honored for that.
Speaking of investments, you recently brought in an investment from China. Why China?
It's amazing when you look into, if you will, the fancy term epidemiology or the natural history of a disease. The incidence rate of esophageal cancer in China is 10 times that of the U.S.
Holy cow.
I don't mean from a population standpoint. It's the numbers per, X thousand. Why? Because of the hot foods, the hot teas, other areas. And so into the Asia and China population, the incidence is just so high, and particularly in children. And we met a few investors that did due diligence on our company. They saw this innovative technology. They knew of other kids into China that had this. And this is, not about trade wars or not about any other piece now. It's to bring innovation to an area that also needs this. And so that large, incidence of esophageal area and atresia, our Chinese investors have heard about that and are very, very, dedicated to funding our company and carrying this technology to Asia.
Jim, we're running out of time today, but I got two fast questions for you, if you could surmise it up a little bit. One, what do you want my listeners to take away from this interview, and what is the next milestone for your company? Yeah,
thanks, Everett. Well, the takeaway. Real problem with these kids right now. There's a problem out there, and there's a technology that it looks like it can translate into this area. And so, just to better understand these areas, and if they know of anybody into this space, just know that there is another company dedicated to be able to come up with a solution. And that final point, sir, on our milestone is we're filing our package to go into clinical trials into mid-year 2019. So just, about a half a year from now, we just hope that, others, we can move forward into the clinical trials and do the work that can get these kids both treated under clinicals and then be able to hopefully find its way into the market.
Company that we're highlighting today here on Stock Day is BioStage Inc. Go to their website, learn more about their company and their products at www.biostage.com. Jim, thank you so much for coming on the show. The only thing I ask from you is please don't wait 2 years to come back on.
Thanks, Everett.
Thank you so much.
This program is entirely sponsored and produced by Uptick Newswire, LLC, which is responsible for the content. The opinions and information provided on this program are those of the guests and those of the respective companies they represent, and do not necessarily reflect those of the staff or management of Uptick Newswire. Uptick Newswire encourages all listeners of this program to do their due diligence and research when determining investment strategies that will work for them, or to seek the assistance of an investment professional. The guests of this program may have paid for its distribution and are not directly affiliated with Uptick Newswire or this station.